What up, what up, what up, what up, what up? How's everybody doing? Good. Well, like Chris said, I am David Lemay. I am the life group director, coordinator. And like he said, he kind of explained it a little bit. So if you're not part of a life group, man, I want you to really think about that. It's not only a place where you get to meet a bunch of cool people and hang out and get to know people, and you get to experience just excitement, struggles, and you form a small family, really. And a lot of these groups, they don't just meet and talk about Jesus, but a lot of them go out on the town. I know there's a couple of them that went out a couple weeks ago. They were out playing Pokemon Go. Pokemon Go, anybody Team Red? Right, all five of us here, Team Red, all five of us. All I gotta say is Team Red was owning Heritage Park today, and I was there for like 30 minutes. So, but I know that some of the life groups are also going on the Metro camping trip. How many of you like camping? Well, I hear if you go camping and you pay for canoeing also, because there's going to be canoeing there, you get a small discount. So if you want to do both, pay for both at the same time, you get a discount. I love canoeing. Canoeing's something I enjoy. So it was about, I think a year ago now, I was planning this sweet surprise date for Joy and I. And at this point, she's probably about 6 months pregnant, so we couldn't do a whole lot. So I'm telling her oh, I got this day planned. We're going to go do this random event out here, and we finally get out there and we're walking into my friend Luke's backyard, and he's got a river that flows through it's actually his parents' backyard, but he's got I believe it's the Huron River, flows into Lake Erie or something like that. So we're walking to the backyard, and I see there's a canoe I got set up, and she starts to think okay, well obviously we're going canoeing, we're about to get in this boat, and in my mind I'm okay, I'm picturing this is going to be amazing. I'm picturing The Notebook. How many people have seen The Notebook, where he gets her out in the rowboat and they're rowing through the swans? So I'm okay, this is going to be amazing. So we get out there, we get in the boat. She's somewhere around 6 to 7 months pregnant, so I figured I'm going to be doing most of the work. She'll lie to you and tell you that she helped, but I know I was the one that was paddling the whole time. But so we're paddling, and we get out there, and we start going down river, and there's birds flying by and chirping, and the sun's just perfect where it's not too hot, but it's shining, and you can see just off in the distance stuff running around in the woods, and you see fish swimming by, and there's a couple ducks that go by with some little ducklings, and everything's just perfect. And we're rowing down river, and we come up to a point where we go around a bend, and there's just a giant opening, and there's tons and tons of lily pads, right? Lily pads. Yes, with the frogs, and you can see frogs jumping. I'm the greatest Noah ever. She is going to love me even more than the day she married me. So we get out there and we start having this just emotional time where we're talking about our child, and we're trying to figure out how the heck are we going to raise a kid? We can barely raise ourselves and take care of ourselves. And so we're having just an awesome time together. We're enjoying this heartfelt moment. And then we start exploring around, and we find this little it's a little, I don't know if a cave, or it's something that goes under. It's like a bridge, but it's super small. And we're thinking about going under, but we see a bunch of spider webs, so we figured, probably not go that way. It's going to be nasty, and we're going to get snakes and spiders, and I hate spiders, so we don't go that way. But it's starting to get late, and we decide to turn around and start paddling back. Now, something I forget about a river that strikes me as we start paddling back is that rivers only flow one way. And my wife's 6, 7 months pregnant, and I'm the one that's going to be paddling. I'm in the back of the canoe, and I start to realize there's this thing called a current. And I start rowing and rowing and rowing, and I'm taking 4 or 5 paddles, and I'm I'm not going anywhere. And I start rowing, and I start rowing, and I'm getting angry with myself, and I'm why did I plan this? And I'm rowing, and I'm rowing. I feel I'm not getting anywhere. I'm rowing 10 times harder, and we're getting a quarter of the way. So I keep rowing the sun. I feel the sun's getting hotter. It's no longer this cool little sunshine that's coming through, but I feel I'm sweating. I'm getting sore, and I'm rowing, and I'm rowing, and I keep rowing. My back's getting tired. I'm borderline hulking out, about to rip my shirt off, freaking out. I'm Joy, grab a paddle. Come on, I'm trying to do this. Not really. She was 7 months pregnant. I didn't yell at her, and I don't even know if she really had a paddle, but she kept offering oh, I'll help. And I'm no, you're pregnant. I got this. But I'm still rowing, and I'm rowing, and I get to a point where we're coming up around a bend. There's a left, dog leg, if you like golf. There's a dog leg left, and it's a point where you come around the bend, and you can see where we're supposed to be docking, getting off. But at this point, I can tell that the current is still really strong in this area, and like you see little like tide pools that like are flowing this way because it's where the current like goes off, starts rotating, and so I keep rowing, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get there, and I keep rowing, and I feel like there's a point where I get to this like emotional, just tired, and my back's hurting, my arms are getting super sore, I'm feeling sunburnt, and I'm like, this is the dumbest idea. Noah's an idiot. The notebook is this, like, it's completely fake. And I'm getting to a point where like, I just want to give up. Like, this is dumb. I can see where I'm supposed to go, but it's taking me an hour to get over there. I'm so sore, so tired. My wife's pregnant. I can't make her paddle because then I just look like a jerk. And I get to a point where I want to be done with this dumb canoe. How many of you have been there? How many of you have felt this before? Maybe you're at a point in your life now where you've got school piling up and you're doing everything you can to get the good grades, but then you get the test back and you got a C or a B, and you just feel let down because you're that straight A student. Or maybe you're that person that's going to community college and you're working a part-time job trying to pay your way through school because you don't have the help behind you to get there. Maybe you're taking on that second job, trying to get ahead, or maybe you're like me, and you're paying off a school bill that looks like you're never, ever, ever going to even make that amount of money. Where I'm like, I just bought a house, and my school bill is double what my house bill was. That doesn't make any sense to me. But I'm getting to a point where like, I'm never going to make it past this debt. How many of you have been there? Maybe you're going through something right now that's just making you want to give up. Maybe you've got a crazy struggle, something in your heart that you're constantly thinking about. Whether it's something silly like school, like sooner or later you're going to be done and you're going to finally feel relieved. Or maybe it's something extremely serious, something that is bothering you to the core. And you just want to give up. I hear people all the time say things like, oh, you're just college students. Like, what could you possibly going through? Well, I would say they're partially right, but at the same time, you're at a point in your life where everything can change in a matter of seconds. Where you could be either struggling through a decision that's going to lead down the path of the rest of your life, or you're coming to that point. And what I want to talk about tonight is I want to expose some things that help us get through these struggles. I want to give you something to cast your focus on, to put your hope in, to get you through. Because I know there's a lot of people here tonight that are probably going through some pretty crazy struggles right now. Probably the craziest struggle you've ever gone into up to this point in your life. So I want to jump into Matthew 14, 22 through 23. At this time, Jesus had just got done finishing feeding the 5,000. And 22, it says, immediately he made the disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. After he dismissed the crowds, he went up to the mountain by himself to pray. And when evening came, he was there alone. If you're underlining anything in your Bible and your phone, I would highlight that. It has nothing to do with this message, but just think about that. Jesus went away by himself to pray, and he does this often. Back into it. 24, but the boat by this time was a long way from the land, beaten by the waves, for the wind was against them. Now, when I read the Bible, I hate reading. And when I do read, I get distracted and I can't focus. So what I try to do is I try to picture it like a movie. Like, I want to feel what they're feeling. I want to go through what they're going. I want to see what they're going through. And I picture all the disciples in this tiny little boat. And you got some of them are rowing, and they're rowing, and I just see these huge waves just crashing on the boat, just crashing. The storms are going crazy. They're paddling, and they're paddling, and they're paddling, and just like me, they're not getting anywhere. They've been out on the water for a long time, and it feels like they've gotten nowhere. And I can picture Peter stepping up because he was a professional fisherman. That was his job. And I can picture him coaching. He's like, come on, guys, seriously, paddle harder, paddle harder. And then I picture some of the disciples that had no business being out on the water in the back, freaking out, stop, man, I'm trying to paddle. And Peter's like, no, seriously, paddle. And the other guy's like, I'm going to die. I can't paddle any harder. And at this point, they're thinking they're literally in a moment where the waves are so strong, the storm's so crazy that they're going through, the struggle is so real, they've got death on the front of their mind thinking, I'm not going to make it through this. There's no way I'm going to be able to continue to go through this. I can't do this. I'm going to die. There's no way we can continue, but can you relate with this? Can you put yourself in that emotion? A feeling where you feel so overwhelmed that everything's coming crashing down, whether it's just one thing on top of one thing on top of one thing, or maybe it's you're trying to get ahead and you're trying to get ahead but you can't. Or maybe for some of you guys, you're trying to get that Christian girl and you're doing all the right things and you love Jesus, so like you're bringing her Tim Hortons to work. You're definitely not taking her out to Starbucks. You're taking her on dates, and then there's that one date where you're like, oh, I'm going to tell her, and you're pumped. And you start walking her up to the door, and she looks at you and like pats you on the shoulder and goes, man, I wish I had more friends like you. And you're like, dang it, I got friend zoned again. There's no way, I just want to give up. I'm single forever. I'm single for Jesus. He's the only one I'm going to date. And everybody else is like, dude, you're a weirdo. Like, stop picking weird girls. But I can picture them in this struggle, this just crazy amounts of emotion where they're literally freaking out because they think they're going to die. And I picture the disciples with buckets of water just trying to scoop it out of the boat. And their waves are crashing in and they're sinking faster than they can put themselves back afloat. And they can't go anywhere. They're battling and they're battling and they're paddling and they're paddling and just getting nowhere. And what I see here is that in the craziness of this struggle, something amazing happens. In verse 25, it starts off, it says, in the fourth watch of the night, he came to them, meaning Jesus, walking on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified and said, it is a ghost. And they cried out with fear, but immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, take heart, it is I, do not be afraid. Put yourself in their shoes here. They're paddling, they're tired, they're worn out. They're probably super hungry and they're nauseous at the same time because they're freaking out and they're working so hard. And in this moment, I hear so many people say, like, how could you think there was a ghost? Of course it's Jesus. And I was like, yeah, right, are you kidding me? Have you ever been so scared? Like, let's say you're home alone and you're sitting in your room and you just hear little things like going off and like in the room, or like something crackles or the heat expands and the floor creaks and you're like, oh my gosh, there's a ghost. There's a ghost in the house. There's no way there's a ghost. Or how about this, for the ones that can't relate with that, I know there's a lot of you that still run down the stairs, shut the lights off, and hurry up and run back upstairs and jump in bed real quick because you're afraid of the dark. Quick little joke is my wife's 28 years old and still has to sleep with the TV on. Luckily, I don't mind it because, I don't know, I just jump in bed, go right to bed, but I know there's people who, in these moments, like, we get scared, so how could we not think it's a ghost? I picture them freaking out with their lives on the line, and they see a figure walking on the water. Of course you're going to think it's a ghost. I would have think it was a ghost. I'd be freaking out. But what I see here is there's a miracle of Jesus walking on the water, but what I take away from it is in their craziest struggle of life, like, they've got death on the front of their mind, and they're freaking out thinking they're going to die, and Jesus walks to them. And he comes out and says, do not be afraid, it is I. And in this moment, we see somebody by the name of Peter step up, and if you know anything about Peter, Peter is very good at putting his foot in his mouth. He was somebody who would, like, jump out and do something without thinking about it. Like, there's a point later on in scripture where Jesus is being like kind of attacked in the garden, and Peter reaches out without thinking and cuts a dude's ear off. And then Jesus kind of looks at him like, dude, seriously, what are you doing? Like, so like Peter all the time was bold, but he was always stepping out, and we can agree that Peter was kind of a little bit crazy. He was doing a lot of things before he would think them through. And this is where he steps in verse 28. It says, Peter answered him, saying, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. And he said, come. So Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came to Jesus. And when he saw the wind, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried out, Lord, save me. And Jesus immediately reached out his hand and took hold of him, saying, O you of little faith, why did you doubt? And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased and the storms calmed. And those in the boat worshiped him, saying, truly, you are the Son of God. And again, can you picture this? I picture this moment where the waves are crashing, the boat's going crazy, this ghost figure comes up, it says it's Jesus, and then I see Peter just stepping up. It's like, if it's you, let me come out in the water. And he's like, okay, come. And Peter's like, oh, who said that was, come out on the water? And Jesus like, yeah, come on. And I picture him like slowly like stepping over the edge and like putting his foot down, like testing to see if it's real. And he's like, okay, I'm doing this. And then I see him walking out of the water, and he's getting closer to Jesus. And then he gets distracted by like lightning off in the background, and he's seeing like this storm. And then he starts to look at the crazy waves crashing around him. He begins to take his focus off Jesus, and he starts to look around. And in that moment, he begins to sink. And instead of like keeping his focus on Jesus, he becomes distracted by the craziness that's going around him. And then he cries out, God, Jesus, save me. Jesus immediately takes his hand and lifts him up. But if I can be honest with you, I feel like I've found myself in Peter's circumstances far too many times. Where I find myself in situations where I feel like I'm saying, God, send me, send me, send me, and I'm stepping out of the boat, but then I get out in the boat and I hear people in the background saying, dude, you're not ready. You're not good enough. There's no way you could be that preacher. There's no way you could do that. And I start to focus on the storm and the struggles that are going around. And I take my eyes off Jesus. And a little bit about me is I felt called into ministry my sophomore year of high school. Just a little bit of background. So from there, I went to Bible college, and I got a pastoral degree, and from there, I kept trying to get job after job after job after job, and I kept saying, no, you're not ready, you need to do this, oh, go here, like, and I got the, typical, like, oh, it's not you, it's us. Sorry, we're going a different direction. And like after years and years, I continue to bottle this stuff up, and I continue to bottle this stuff, and I don't even realize it. I feel like, no, I'm just brushing it off. Like, I'm fine, I can deal with it. And then just a couple of weeks ago, I was out in Boston on an interview, and it was amazing. The city of Boston's awesome. Everybody that just went out to Boston, I keep hearing everybody say wicked. Like, they say wicked all the time there. It's crazy. It's weird. But I'm going out, and I'm going out, and I've had this guy investing tons of like time into me and resources, and then so I get home and I'm pumped. I'm super excited about this. I'm like, dude, I think I'm going to get this job. I think I'm finally going to get this. I'm finally going to start doing full-time ministry. Like, my heart is yearning for this. I'm going to be able to do it. And then about 2 or 3 days I get home, my buddy Luke gets home from, I think he was in Nicaragua or Colombia, one of the two. And so I'm texting him he just lands on the plane, I'm texting him, we're texting back and forth, like joking, having fun. He's also my boss, so we're talking a little bit about work stuff, and then it goes for about like 3 hours where I don't hear from him, and I just figured he was getting home, he was seeing his wife, seeing his family, things like that, and then I get a text message while I'm at work, and my buddy Dan, who also works with us, gets the same text, and we're in a group text together, and I get a text from Luke that says, dude, don't tell anybody, but my dad passed away last night. And I'm like, I gotta be strong. And me and Dan look at each other, we don't know what to say, and we spend hours in silence where not even a customer came in, and I'm like, okay, I gotta be strong, I gotta bottle this up, and Luke's dad was a guy who was a crazy big role model in my life. I actually worked in the same business as him for a while, so like I knew him, I was close. I spent tons and tons of hours at his house and days at his house and lived there for a little while. And I'm just bottling this stuff up, and I don't realize it. I think I'm being strong. I think I'm okay. I gotta be as strong as possible for Luke. I gotta do everything I can for him. And then so like a few days later, I find out on Friday that I actually didn't get the job in Boston. And like he gives me a few other leads, but I just continue being knocked down, and I go back to it, and like I'm like, okay, this is okay. Like I'm bottling it up. I'm okay. I'm brushing it off. But then it comes to a Monday where I find out that I actually screwed up on a transaction not once but twice, and I cost their company tons and tons of money. For the first time in 5 years, I screwed up on a transaction, and it's also the biggest loss we've ever had as a company. And on my way home, I find myself in my car, and I'm like, God, why am I not good enough? Why do I continue to screw up? Why am I continuing to not get a job? God, I'm trying to serve you with my entire heart. I'm trying to do everything I possibly can, and I find myself in this crazy, depressed, tear-filled moment where I'm sitting here and I'm trying to figure out what to do, and I can't even think of what to pray. I can't even think of what to say. I'm extremely depressed, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on, and I'm thinking, God, I'm doing everything everything you've called me to do, but why can I not get this next step? Why can I not go to this next place? Why can I not get the full-time job? And I've become to realize I'm getting in this crazy, crazy struggle where it's the deepest, darkest moment of my entire life that I cannot even explain to you the thoughts and the emotions and the crazy things that were going on in my head. But I got to a point where I was like, I just want to quit. I'm doing everything you're telling me to do. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. As a Christian, I'm walking in the right direction. I'm trying to serve you. Why are things not going the way I planned? And I feel like sometimes there's struggles that we get ourselves into because God has called us to do something a long time ago, but you continue to think that you're not ready for it, so you're trying to do other things to get to the point where you're going to be ready. And I find this is part of my story. I believe a long time ago, God called me to do something, and I've continued to say I'm not ready for it, I can't be ready, and then I start listening to these voices in the back of my head like, oh, you're not a good enough preacher, you're not a good enough speaker, you don't know enough, you're not ready, you're too young, and I start to believe them, and I start to take my eyes off Jesus and His calling, and I start to get stuck in this crazy struggle, in this crazy storm, and I'm bottling things up, and then out of nowhere the top pops off. And I start freaking out, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And I find myself just sitting in my car for like 2 or 3 days. Like every time I got in there, like I would just start listening to worship music, and I'd have no idea what even to pray. And I'm like, God, what is going on? What is going on right now? I have no idea where to go, what to do, what to say. What is going on? Why do I feel this way? I'm doing everything you said to do, and again, I can't get my plan to work. And I think part of it is because it's my plan and not His. God had a plan for me a long time ago, and He said, follow me and I will let this happen. But I wanted my own plan to happen. I've tried to chase my own way. I was a lot like Peter, and I got out into the water and I stepped out of the boat in faith, trying to search after Jesus and trying to preach the gospel and trying to run after Him and do full-time ministry, which is all good, but it's not His plan for my life at this moment. He has a plan. He's ready. He's got a better plan that's far better than mine. And where I want to land tonight, what I want to leave you with, is I know there's moments in your life where you can be extremely stressed out, to a point where you literally have no idea what direction to step in because you feel like you're going to step in the wrong direction and screw everything else up. Or maybe there's some of you here tonight that don't even know if you believe in this thing, Jesus. And you're wrestling with it and you're struggling with it. What I want to give you tonight is the fact that Jesus is there. He's waiting for you. He's waiting for you to cry out to Him like Peter did. He's waiting for you to say, Jesus, save me. He doesn't care how big your struggle is. He doesn't care if it's pornography. He doesn't care if it's drugs. He doesn't care if it's the thoughts of suicide. He will rip those things away for you. But you have to cast your cares, or you have to cast your eyes upon Him. You have to cry out to Him, saying, Jesus, save me. I know there's tons and tons of hurt that could be here tonight. There's tons and tons of struggles. Maybe you're like me and you're stepping out in faith and you're trying to do everything you feel Jesus is calling you to do. You feel like you have this crazy calling on your heart that you're trying to search after, but every time you take a step out of the boat, you feel like you continue to sink. In some ways, I want to encourage you, listen, the storms are going to come, the struggles are going to come, there's going to be times you're going to sink, but the glorious thing is Jesus standing right there waiting for you to cry out. He's ready to pick you up. He doesn't care how bad the struggle is. If you're searching for Jesus and trying to figure out if this is real, He would love for you to cry out because He wants to show you His true love. He's not hiding. He's either standing right next to you, He's walking up towards you, He's trying to get your attention every way He can. All you got to do is cry out to Him. So how I want to kind of close tonight is that I know there's hurt going on. I know there's struggle going on, and if you're saying there's nothing you're struggling with, you're probably lying to yourself, and it's deeper than you ever thought, because that's what I was doing for so long. I was continuously bottling up, thinking everything was perfect, everything was fine, and I was chasing after God, but I really wasn't, because I was holding everything back. And if you're bottling things up and don't realize it, there's going to be a point where that top blows off and you're going to lose everything. You're going to freak out, you're going to go into a deep, dark depression, and I pray you don't do that. So what I kind of want to do is, if you're dealing with something tonight, if you're truly struggling with something, or maybe Maybe you're that person who's trying to seek out Jesus and you're just not sure. Don't leave here without getting those questions answered. And maybe if you're struggling with something, don't leave here the same person that walked through those doors today. Leave it here. Leave it at the cross. Leave it at the feet of Jesus. Cry out to him saying, Jesus, save me. And I promise you, he'll rip you out of that struggle. You'll become stronger for it. Your faith will grow, and you'll get up there, and the calm will come, and you'll be praising him saying, thank you. Thank you. So if I can, I would love to have some leaders just down front. If you're going through anything, if you're struggling, whatever it may be, find somebody, talk to somebody, figure things out. Don't let it keep building up. Don't let it keep bottling up, because when it explodes, it hurts. I don't cry often, and I promise you all last week, man, I was a wreck. And there was so many times I was like, dude, you have no idea what I'm going through. And people are trying to encourage me, and I'm like, you have no idea how I feel. I literally have no words to even explain this. Don't go into those moments. It's so much easier when you're in the storm just to cry out. Don't bottle things up. Just talk about them. Get used to exposing the insides. So if you could, I would love for you to bow your heads. And if in this moment, even if you feel like you need to pray with somebody, talk with somebody, just go ahead and stand up now and just head off to the side. We've got some leaders over here. But God, I pray that you give us the ability to cry out to you, God. Don't let us hold back. God, I know there's crazy struggle that is going on. Whether it's dealing with loss, whether it's dealing with drugs, whether it's dealing with even suicidal thoughts, God, I know for a fact people here are dealing with crazy things. I don't care how young we are, God, I know there's craziness going on in this world right now that we are dealing with. Whether it's Satan bashing our door down or whether it's just us struggling within ourselves, God. Lord, I pray that you open our hearts. I pray that you give us the ability to look out to you and cry out, Jesus, save me. Because I know I cannot get through this life on my own by myself. God, I know my plan is never as good as yours. Lord, please take my hand and pull me out of this storm. God, whatever that struggle may be tonight, God, if there's something crazy on somebody's heart, do not let them leave without exposing that, without talking about it. And God, I pray that if somebody is here searching for you, seeking for you, Lord, that you will allow them to seek somebody out and get questions answered. God, don't let anybody in here leave the same person that walked in those doors. But Lord, I pray that we leave our struggles with you. We pray that we leave everything by here at the cross, at your feet, God, and we just love you and chase after you. God, I pray these things in your holy name. Amen.